This is a crucial, crucial case. You have conservatives who desperately want to gut the Voting Rights Act. Clarence Thomas will love nothing better than to get rid of it. Your assessment, you listened to the entire 60 minutes or so, your assessment of what you heard today.
Yeah, they actually went 2 hours today. So let's start with what is really at issue here. The Voting Rights Act, Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act, says that it's illegal to discriminate in voting on the basis of race. That seems very simple. But how do you prove that discrimination has taken place? How do you prove it in the context of a racial gerrymander? How can you actually make the case under Section 2 that this gerrymander is too racist to be allowed? Because it's obviously racist. Like, that actually wasn't really what was at issue today at court. Alabama, as you heard Justice Kagan say, Alabama has one majority-minority district. That's 14% of its congressional, 1 out of 7. That's 14% of its congressional districts. Black people in Alabama make up 27% of the population. The most obvious thing would be to give 2 majority-minority black districts in Alabama. That would be 28% of their congressional districts. The fact that Alabama wouldn't do that is obviously racially biased, so much so that the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals, with 2 Trump judges on it, said that, yeah, this is obviously racist. Alabama has to do better. So what's really at issue in the court is how to prove that what Alabama was doing was in fact racist beyond the numbers. Now, over the course of the 2 hours, you saw kind of a split. There were 3 justices, I'd say, Roberts, Barrett, and Kavanaugh, who seemed to want to say that the real problem is that drawing this second majority-minority district would involve a sweeping across the state of Alabama east to west, because that's where the black people live. Roland, I know you know where the black belt is in this country. It sweeps from west to east, from about East Texas all the way up to coastal Virginia, right? So catching that sweep across the Alabama, essentially the Alabama Republicans are arguing that's too long of a district. I find that intellectually unpersuasive, but that's their argument. Too long to not be racist, right? The other 3 justices, Alito, Thomas, and Gorsuch, who remained silent during the entire hearing, they seem to favor an approach that suggests that you can only prove that a gerrymander is racist is if you can put up an alternative map that would end up with more black representation without telling the computer where the black people live. They were saying that you needed a race-neutral map, but their definition of race-neutral involves becoming blind to the realities of where black people live. And so it's like if the computer randomly, with no racial information, comes up with a district that's with a map that has more black representation, well, maybe then you can challenge it under Section 2. But if you tell the computer, hey, this is where black people live, give me a map with 2 black districts, no, they say, that you cannot use to prove a violation of Section 2. And that's where the cleave really was at the court today amongst the conservatives, and we'll see which side wins. If Alito's side wins, that will basically mean that nobody can effectively challenge a racist gerrymander under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act.
And that really is the fundamental case. I did find it quite interesting, Elie, in listening to some of the testimony, to hear them say, oh, no, the computer doesn't factor in race. And the other attorney said, oh, yes, it does. Because it's what you input into the computer. The computer doesn't just work on its own. You can get a certain result based upon how you program it.
Right. And if I tell the computer to be stupid, guess what? The computer will be stupid. One really important factor, for instance, that you saw a little bit in the sound that you played. The white Republicans, they were super protective of the Gulf Coast, weren't they? I mean, I think you guys probably heard that, right? The Gulf Coast, that is a predominantly white area. that area, they don't want to be cracked. They don't want to break up the predominantly white Gulf Coast area. So instead of breaking that up, they're choosing to split up the black belt that runs west to east across Alabama. So they've split the black belt into, I believe, 5 different congressional districts, whereas they've left the Gulf Coast into its own congressional district. So when you hear the Alabama man saying, oh, well, it has to respect our traditional ways of districting, understand that those traditional ways are in fact racist. Understand when he says that, and you didn't play this part, but he says, like, well, we have to look at where the rivers run. Well, understand that black people live on this side of the river or that side because of where they were allowed to buy homes during a period of redlining, when insurance companies wouldn't give them mortgage opportunities on the wrong side of the river. Now, during oral arguments, I thought brilliantly, Ketanji Brown Jackson made all of these points during oral arguments. I mean, to quote the man from the song, Ketanji Brown Jackson, she ready for y'all. Like, she came to play on her first days of the court. The clip that you played of her earlier, talking about the Civil Rights Act of 1866, man, Roland, I wrote about that in my book. And to kind of hear a Supreme Court justice make an argument that I've made in my writings was like super gratifying for me. She is on it in terms of calling out these conservatives on their racist BS. The problem is that she, along with Justice Elena Kagan, who you played, and Justice Sotomayor, who asked another one of the best questions, really that point about the Gulf Coast, that was Sotomayor's questions. These 3 women, they are in the minority, and they will not be able, I don't think, to influence the majority outcome in this case.
The thing that you talked about, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, first day, she did not come to play. I mean, she brought the heat on day one.
She's been absolutely brilliant so far in her questioning. And just like, take this bit, right? Think about it this way. You heard her in the clip that you played, Roland. She said what the framers intended with the 14th and 15th Amendments. When have you heard the framers to be talking about the people who wrote the Reconstruction Amendments as opposed to the white slavers who wrote the original Constitution? Like, when have you heard that switch? That is what a person like Ketanji Brown Jackson brings to the court, that different perspective, that actually if we're going to make an originalist argument, that argument that you played from her, that was fundamentally an originalist argument. Arguably, Antonin Scalia could have made that argument, but you see how she flipped it. She talked about the framers in terms of the people who wrote the Reconstruction Amendments, the amendments that were written specifically, as she put it, in a race-conscious way to give rights and responsibilities to the freed men and women post the Civil War. She flipped it to talk about the framers in that way, as opposed to talk about the founders who protected slavery in their original conception of the Constitution. These kinds of subtle intellectual shifts. On her first day yesterday, she, instead of talking about, it was a issue about the Clean Water Act, and instead of talking about what Thomas Jefferson or James Madison might have thought about clean water, she asked, what did Congress think about the Clean Water Act when they wrote it? So again, she's actually being very textualist on the slide, but she's being textualist in the right way. She's being textualist in the modern way. She's talking about what did the people who wrote our current laws think about how they should be applied, not what long dead white folks thought about in the 18th century.
Obviously, no one can predict what a Supreme Court will do, but it is fair to say the votes are there on the conservative side to absolutely go further, to gut the Voting Rights Act.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, like I said, the Republican, the racist gerrymander in Alabama is going to win. The Republican position is going to win 6-3. This ain't a fairy tale. They're winning this argument. The question is how. And the how matters, because if they win it on the argument that putting the black belt into one district is just too long, while that sounds stupid and intellectually is stupid, it at least allows for a future where perhaps some other racist gerrymander in some other state coming down the pipe can still be challenged under Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. If they do it in the other way, the most extreme way, the way that says that you can only challenge a racist gerrymander if you can feed garbage into a computer and have it randomly poop out a great result. Like if you take that approach, then it's very hard to see how anybody in the future would ever have the ability to effectively challenge a racist gerrymander in front of the Supreme Court. So yes, the conservatives are going to win, most likely. Yes, the Republicans have the vote to do what they want, but how they go about doing it, how they go about making Alabama win is still critically important.
All right, folks, back to our Roland Martin Unfiltered video in just one moment.
When we invest in ourselves, our glow, our vision, our vibe, we all shine. Together, we are black beyond measure.
Folks, Black Star Network is here.
Hold no punches. I'm real revolutionary right now. Black power.
Support this man, Black Media. He makes sure that our stories are told.
Thank you for being the voice of Black America, Roland.
Stay black. I love y'all.
All momentum we have now, we have to keep this going.
The video looks phenomenal.
See, this difference between Black Star Network and black-owned media and something like CNN.
You can't be black-owned media and be scared.
It's time to be smart.
Bring your eyeballs home.
You dig?